Hello, my name is Crystal Petry, and you are watching another episode of the Crystal Petry Podcast, Season 4. Today's guest is the definition of resilience in motion. From engineering championship-winning NASCAR cars and working alongside Jimmie Johnson to serving as Chief of Staff for the University of Virginia football team, his journey shatters every limitation placed in front of him. Born without arms, featured on ESPN, and now a sought-after keynote speaker, he's living proof that obstacles don't block purpose, they reveal it. Welcome to the podcast, Richie Parker. How are you?
Yes. Thanks for having me, Crystal. Glad to be
Thank you
here.
so much for being on my podcast and just telling us your story. I cannot wait to hear it. But where in the world are you, Richie?
Right now, I'm in Charlottesville, Virginia. I end up kind of being back between Charlottesville and Charlotte, North Carolina. Both of those places are kind of like home base. But yeah, right now in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Excellent. Okay, so let's hop into this podcast. You were born without arms. How did your early life shape your mindset before your career even began?
Yeah, well, it's the only thing I have ever known, right? So I feel I'm fortunate in a lot of ways. I haven't gone through the transition of having a traumatic event where I lost limbs or lost something of that nature. So yeah, this is the only thing that I have ever known. It's the challenge that God has given me, and it's the one that I accept, and I'm going to make the most of it.
Sounds like you have made the most of it, and we'll
Yeah.
get into that as the podcast goes. Who or what helped you develop resilience at an age?
Yeah, I think there have been a lot of people along the way that have been a part of that journey for me. My parents are huge in that way. They have been huge in encouraging me along the way, but also in challenging me. And I've always had a solid, close circle around me, and that close circle has done a good job of challenging me just as much as encouraging me along the way. So, but yeah, my parents would probably be the biggest, the contributing factor in the life that I have been able to live so far. Just the way they have encouraged me, they've been there for me, challenged me at times when I needed to, especially at an early age, right? And then as I got older, then it's it's kind of on me to be that stubborn and determined person to tackle life in the way that I need to.
Realize, or maybe your parents helped you realize this, that you would not allow the fact that you were born without arms to define who you are or define your future.
Yeah, it's something that's not going to change, right? So it's something I accepted and embraced at a young age, right? So this is who I am, and I think as you get older, as I got older, I've kind of learned to embrace my uniqueness instead of it being something that I'm running away from, right? This is who I am. Um, take advantage of the things that I can do within this body that are an advantage for me going forward, right? Like some of the challenges I have encountered even at a young age, like those things, I see them as a blessing and something that is an advantage for me as I get older, right? I could look at it as a disadvantage, but I really see it as an advantage because it has helped me to build resilience along the way, right? So it's one of those things where it's all in perspective, right? It's how you look at it.
Now, Richie, I know that you were born without arms, but when we spoke initially,
Mhm.
the most shocking thing for me was that you worked in NASCAR.
Yeah.
And I am going to be very vulnerable and very honest and say the reason that was so shocking to me is because you are a Black man and NASCAR is a predominantly white sport. They are, I feel like, making strides to bring in diversity and bring in more Black people and more people of color to work within that sport. How did you land a role as an engineer with Hendrick Motorsports in NASCAR?
Yeah, so I will agree. They are making strides, I believe, in the right direction now. And you can look at just pit road, and there are just so many people of color that are on pit crews and things of that nature now that were not years ago. I know when I came into the sport, there was a guy named Rocco Williams, who he's still heavily involved in the sport, but he was one of the few people of color who was a pit crew member. And I think he had just started like a year or two prior. But so that has changed a lot. For me, my start was in some ways like an accident, right? I wasn't pursuing a role in NASCAR and in racing. I didn't know a lot about racing when I was younger. I grew up around cars and classic cars, and that was a big hobby in my family, but didn't know much about NASCAR. I just knew a few names like Jeff Gordon and whatnot. So for me, there was an internship that I applied for when I was a senior in college. I was getting ready to move on from Clemson and pursue some job opportunities, and I saw this internship, and I knew it was car related, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to apply for this and see what happens. And then I got accepted for the internship. And at that time, I was going to go into an engineering role that I had some engineering options that I really wasn't excited about. So for me, it was like, okay, do I go do these jobs that I'm not excited about? The other thing I was interested in at the time was pursuing a law degree. So I was going to go into law school. So my plan was to pursue the internship, and it was only supposed to be 10 weeks. I was going to do the 10 weeks of the internship and then transition into law school. That wasn't God's plan, right? So I got there and at the internship, and 10 weeks turned into many more years after starting off there.
What was it like working with Jimmie Johnson during his championship years? And like you, I do not know many names within the NASCAR circuit, within the speedway circuit, so many different ones, but Jimmie Johnson is one that I know. What was it like working with him?
Yeah, so for me, with any of the well-known drivers that have been part of Hendrick Motorsports or just part of the sport in general, they're just teammates. They're no different than the other 500, or at times we had almost 600 people in our organization, and that's how we view it. Is they're just other teammates, right? And that was one advantage for me coming into the sport, that I did not view the people there in a like celebrities, right? Like they were my coworkers, they were my teammates, right? We are some of the groups I was involved in, like we're designing suspension components, or we're designing components around their safety seat, right? Like or their brakes, right? So when we're working on those types of things, like it's not just about going fast, it's also about keeping them safe, right? So in that way, it's best to view them just like that they are human, they're your teammates. We want to win the race, but we also want to make sure they go home to their family and they're safe after the race is over. So that's what it was like to me. Like the goal was to go in there every day and do the best that you can. And we were all had a shared mission, and that was to win races and championships. And collectively, we all did that well for a few years, for sure.
You were a part of 9 championships, well over 100 wins. What does that look like behind the scenes? Because as your just average viewer, you're just watching the race on TV. You see the person win, you see the person lose, but clearly there's more to it than that. So from your perspective, what does that look like, helping to win championships, helping to win over 100 wins within NASCAR?
Yeah, it's a lot of hard work. It's that shared mission that I mentioned, right, across the entire complex. I feel like racing is one of those environments and one of those sports that is the ultimate team sport, because people know the drivers, and they see they hear the names of some of the crew chiefs and some of the people that are in front of the camera. But if that guy that's inspecting valve springs weeks prior to the engine being assembled, if he doesn't do his job at a high level, then the engine's going to blow up. If the person that's installing a seal in the rear end housing doesn't inspect it well and install that part to the best of his ability or her ability, then you're going to have a failure on the racetrack, right? And it might be 10 laps before the end of the race, right? So it's the ultimate team sport in that everyone that touches something on that car or a component on that car has to do their job extremely well, or we don't win the race. So it's just a high standard.
Did you face any challenges because you are a Black man in NASCAR?
I would say early on there were some challenges just coming in, and I didn't know anybody. I didn't look like anybody that was in that general space I was working in. There were some people that, it took a couple of years before we were able to develop relationships along the way. But at the same time, there were some awesome people that took me under their wing from day one and created an environment for me to either fail or succeed, right? And that's all I wanted in that moment, right? As long as you don't place barriers in front of me or unnecessary barriers, then just give me the opportunity. So there are some awesome people. I mean, Randy Stewart, Sarge, is Big Mark Witten, Rex Stump, and I'm hesitant to even mention some of those names, right? Because the list goes on and on. But there were some great people that created the space for me to show what I was capable of doing. So when I reflect on my time, and especially my early days, that's what I choose to focus on, because there's always going to be a little bit of both on good and bad. But I'm very grateful for the good and the people that created that environment for me to show what I was capable of doing.
So, as I stated before, and as we talked about earlier, you were a part of 9 championships, over 100 wins. So you won a lot. What was it like when you failed? How did you handle that? How did you work your way through that?
Yeah, so the cool thing about our organization is that we had 4 teams within the organization. So we were supporting all 4 teams. And pretty much without a doubt, even if one of our cars won the race, for sure there was going to be 1 or 2 other cars that we had in that race that had an issue, had a major issue, or had a failure along the way. That as soon as the cars got back from the racetrack, that we had to address that and go through the process of doing a problem report and doing the best we could do to make sure that particular failure didn't happen again. So it was awesome scenario, right? Like anytime you're winning, you're also dealing with the failure component of it too at the same time. It's a very interesting dynamic.
So Richie, and again, for transparency, which I said this at the beginning, I don't know a lot about NASCAR or speed racing or any of that. So you mean to tell me that you have multiple cars from the same team competing against each other in the same race?
So at Hendrick Motorsports, we were an organization with 4 different car numbers. So the whole time I was there, essentially the whole time I was there, we had 4 different Cup cars. So in each race, we had 4 teams that were competing against each other, but also competing against everyone else in the industry. Right. So, so it's that was an interesting dynamic as well, because oftentimes the role that I was in a role that we were serving all of our teams. So you're constantly trying to serve those teams equally. So there's a lot of dynamics and a lot of politics behind the scenes with that as well. Right. People have their trade secrets and things of that nature, but we're not supposed to have secrets amongst teammates, but everyone's looking for any advantage that they can take to the racetrack. So it makes for some interesting dynamics in-house before you ever get to Sunday and you're competing against everyone else.
I'm thinking, like, my first thought with that, Richie, was like, you're competing against yourself. That doesn't make for good sports. But then my second thought was, if you have 4 cars in the race, that gives you 4.
And Crystal, I lost you for a second there.
You got me?
Okay. Yeah, I got you now. Can you restate that question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was thinking, when you first said that you have 4 cars in the race, that you're competing against each other. So
Yeah.
that can't make for good sport. But then I also thought, if you have 4 cars in the same race, that gives you 4 opportunities to win that race and win
Yeah.
the prize money.
Yeah.
So, I mean, either way you look at it, I choose to look at it as if you have 4 opportunities to win the race.
Yeah, we do, but it's also it's an environment where iron sharpens iron, right? And if all
Mhm.
4 of our cars are functioning and those teams are functioning at a high level, then in theory we are much better than our competition by the time we show up to the racetrack, because we're sharpening each other throughout the week. And I think for many years that is how it worked, right? Just the goal is to make sure that everyone has the best that we can provide as an organization, even though when they get to the racetrack, those drivers are competing against each other. But there's also advantages during the race where the drivers can lean on each other when it comes to strategy and things of that nature that can help each other throughout a race, and then hopefully get down to the last few laps, and may the best driver win at that point.
Now, why did you leave NASCAR? So you left NASCAR, then you went on to college football at the University of Virginia, which is a powerhouse football program. Why did you make that transition?
Yeah, well, so like even I mentioned in the very beginning, my goal even after college, it wasn't to just be in NASCAR, right? I ended up in
Mhm.
NASCAR, and it was a good fit for me for many years. But you get to a point, for me at least, where it's like another race win did not fuel me and it didn't drive me, because I poured a lot into what I did. It's a lot of hours, many weekends. I kind of approach anything I do in life that way, right? So it just got to a point where I felt like it was time to pour into something else in some ways, and I wanted to be of service in different ways. And I felt like transitioning into stick and ball sports or like football was something that would allow me to still be in a competitive environment, but serve people a little bit more than I was able to serve within the racing environment.
You were chief of staff for the University of Virginia football team. How was that leadership role different from your leadership role at motorsports within NASCAR?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is within NASCAR and racing, it's mostly about winning, and it's about the car. Everything is focused towards the car and it performing the best that it can on the weekend. And yeah, that was, and then also some of those dynamics that I mentioned, because I started as an intern, and when I was left, I was leading the design group at Hendrick Motorsports, right? So I was dealing with those dynamics of having 4 different teams within one organization, and trying to juggle some of the politics between those different teams and whatnot. And then when you get to an environment like it's football, it's for me, which is why I wanted to be in that space. It was more so about the 120 to 130 young men that were on the team, and serving them well, right? And it's less so about the race car and a tenth of a second on the racetrack, and it's about making sure that those young men have everything that they need to be the best version of themselves.
How did you help the football players deal with pressure that comes with college football? Because it is immense level of pressure for college football players as well as the coaches. How did you help them deal with that pressure? How did you help them deal with success when they won the games, failure when they lost the games?
Yeah, I think the key for anyone in that environment, anyone that's on staff or a coach, is to um, people. You can tell people something all you want, right? But people are going to feel when you truly care for them, and they know that you care for them and that you're there for them. They're going to feel it, right? So creating that environment where the young men know that I was there for them, that we're all there for them. We're there to help them succeed. We're there for them when times are good, but also when times are bad. Like and people could feel that, right? So I wanted to be myself and be authentic and genuine in that way. And I feel like, the young men that were in that program, they knew that they can count on me. And if they knew that, then I feel like that would help them to be the best version of themselves, right? In any way they could lean on me and I'd be there to help them. And even to this day, like I'm not there now, I'm pursuing something different, but that phone still rings every now and then from people, players that were on the team at that time, and that's not going to change. Like it doesn't matter where my paycheck is coming from. Like if you're in my life, you're part of my life, then I'm there to help, for lifetime.
ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports, told your story, Richie Parker. So walk us through, how did this happen? Did you just receive a phone call a random day with them saying, hey, we want to do an expose on you? And did they come out to your house? Did they follow you? What was that entire process?
Yeah. So like we talked about earlier on in my early days of being in racing, yeah, I stuck out like a sore thumb, right, in that
Yes.
environment. So I looked different in a lot of different ways. So especially a lot of my work was done behind the scenes, there in our shops and at the campus that we worked at. But if I went to the racetrack, then I really stuck out like a sore thumb, and people would want to know, like, who is this guy? And my goal from day one was to be the best teammate I could be. And I'm not a huge fan of standing out and being recognized in front of anyone else, especially in a team environment. So when people would see me, there would be different news outlets and things that would want to do a story, and they would reach out to the representatives at Hendrick Motorsports, and then the reps at Hendrick would come talk to me, and I avoided it like the plague for many years. And it got to a point where there were a lot of calls coming in, and the folks at Hendrick Motorsports had a relationship with some people at ESPN,
Mm-hmm.
and they said, "Hey, if you would be open to doing this, then we feel like this would be the right group to do it with and the right person, and we felt like they would do it in a respectful way."
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't sold even then, right? So the producer Lauren Stowell, she came down and we spent some time together for a full day. And I think after that day, I felt comfortable. And my mindset at that time was like, okay, let me do this so that people will stop reaching out and they'll stop bugging me and I can go back to work
Mm-hmm.
and do what I have been doing for the past few years. And yeah, and it didn't, the response was a little bit more than I expected, but in a positive way, right? Like partly the reason I agreed to do it too is like if God can use me and use my life in a positive way to impact others, then that's what it's all about, right? Hopefully that's why we're all here, is to continue to build on His kingdom and be a positive impact for others. So ultimately, I was thankful for that. But yeah, some of the attention that came with it was not exactly what I was looking for at all. So it took a little bit of an adjustment to deal with that over the years, but in a lot of ways, it's all good, right? I've been able to make a positive impact. I've been able to pivot into speaking a little bit and sharing more about my life, and hopefully help other people see what they're capable of doing in their own lives.
What was some of that attention that came your way that you were not a fan of?
Oh, just a lot of folks reaching out, tons of messages and emails and requests to then follow up and do different TV shows and things of that nature. So I turned down a lot of those things because that wasn't why I agreed to do it to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And even speaking requests, I waited, I think, over 6 months before even agreeing to do any speaking requests, because that's not why I agreed to do the feature in the beginning, right? Like I wanted to do my job, and we were knee deep in trying to win championships, and I was focused on being the best teammate I could be as well. But then gradually started to accept some opportunities to go speak and do those things around the work that I was doing, right? Just trying to fit that into vacation time and anywhere I could in the schedule. But yeah, just naturally, I like to do my work behind the scenes. And like I mentioned, at times at Hendrick Motorsports, we had around 600 people there, right? So I'm just one small piece of that pie. So I never wanted to stand out in a way that would minimize my teammates. That was always something that was very important to me.
What has been the hardest decision you've had to make, if you can think of something?
Yeah, I've had a few. I would say some of the hardest decisions for me have been, in my working career.
Mm-hmm.
Even the decision to transition away from Hendrick Motorsports to go into football, or there have been some other career decisions that I've had to make, and those are hard decisions because when I made those decisions, I was in a place of comfort and what felt like security, and so to step away from that
Absolutely.
comfort and security to unknown is always a little scary. But I have one life to live. I feel like that's for all of us, right? So I want to live it to the fullest, and that means at times pushing myself out of my comfort zone to challenge myself and experience new things, even if it means permanently or temporarily, being away from that comfort and security that's there. Because reality, sometimes that comfort and security is not real, right? Like it's imagined as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, and sometimes you just got to push yourself, and that's where growth comes from, right? Pushing yourself outside of that comfort zone.
Why did you decide to become a keynote speaker? And I know that's something that you're kind of working pretty heavy in right about now, kind of making that circuit and making those rounds. Why did you decide to become a keynote speaker?
It is something I have been slow to accept and then finally embrace. But I've had a lot of encouragement over the years to do this. Way back before I even had a career, right? Before I even started at Hendrick Motorsports. But it took many years for me to get to the point where it's like, okay, I can embrace this. I can make it not about me, make it about my audience and the people that are there to that I'm there to share with and serve. And so yeah, it's taken a while, but I think it's important for me now to get out and show people it's not about me, right? But show people that they are capable of doing so much more oftentimes than what they realize that they're capable of doing. And sometimes it takes a framework. Sometimes it takes some examples for people to see that. But hopefully that's what people come away from when I'm around them, whether it's one-on-one, whether it's like coaching or it's speaking or what have you, right? I hope they realize that they have more inside themselves that they can push to achieve more in their own lives.
What singular message or piece of advice, Richie, would you want my community to take away from your story?
Yeah, embrace it. That's one of my favorite words, right? Embrace it. Right, whatever it is you're going through, if it's a medical challenge or if it's some trauma that you've dealt with in the past, any challenge, right? I don't believe they're all things that we have to look at or can look at and laugh about, and it's not always pleasant. But whatever it is that you're faced with, like that's what God has given you, and that's your assignment, is to take that challenge and make the most of it, right? And I think for all of us, the quicker that we're able to get past the phase of just understanding this challenge and this difficulty that we're facing, and get beyond just simply accepting that this is what we have to face, and then get to the stage of like truly embracing it, where we take ownership of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily pleasant still at that point, but we own it. No one else owns it. No one else takes charge in your own life. Like, you own it. So make the most of it, right? This is the life that you have to live. And a lot of it comes from just not looking to your left and your right, and all the things that we have now in social media that get us distracted about how we think other people are living their lives. Like, just live your life to the best of your ability, embrace whatever you're going through, and sometimes make the necessary changes that you need to make so that you can live it to the fullest.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Richie Parker, for sharing your story on my platform, sharing your story with my community. I appreciate it so much. As we get ready to wrap up, I have one final question for you. Who do you think would make a great guest on the podcast? But you have to help me get them on.
Okay. LeVar Thomas is one name that comes to mind. He and I have been involved in a cohort together with another speaker that has been able to share with us his journey. He's way more experienced than we are. And so I've been able to hear a little bit about his story and some of the leadership things he's been involved with in the past, and even what he's involved with currently. And I think he would have a lot to share with your podcast and with your audience.
Again, Mr. Richie Parker, thank you so much for being on my podcast. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
And to my community, thank you so much for tuning in and watching. You can get Richie's podcast and all of my other podcasts on YouTube Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. And remember, you always have time to listen and learn on the go.